My parents keep making fun of my husband. It's because he doesn't dress fancy and they think he's poor, he doesn't make much money. But there's a secret. He makes way more money than they could ever imagine. And I'm going to break the news to him by doing this. There's nothing I hate in my life beyond someone trying to dictate to me how to live my life when I'm no longer a kid. You might not have experienced what I'm talking about if you don't have a sister like mine. I come from a family of 4. It used to be my parents, my sister, and me, but we were reduced to just 3 when death snatched my mother away from us just a few years ago. My father is a senior lawyer who has influence here and there, while my sister Kathy, who has taken up the mother role, and I would not say she's done a great job. She's an accountant who earns very well. I studied nursing in college, and I didn't need, to roam around the streets in the city where we lived to get a job upon my graduation. My father, he used his influence to pull a string here and there, and that resulted in a quick job as a head nurse in a prestigious hospital. I'm grateful for the fact that my father's used his position to set up his 2 children, but while it's good to come from a family that's above the average lifestyle, it has its disadvantages too. I was on duty at the hospital one day when a patient who had sprained his ankle was rushed to the hospital. He was brought there by Chris, who would turn out to be the guy that sweeps me off my feet. Chris tried getting overly friendly with me as I attended to the patient whom he had brought, and though my profession required that we just be friendly, I tried doing so while remaining professional. I thought that I would ward Chris off like I've done other people in the past, but it turned out he was more serious than they were. He trailed me down to my unofficial hours, and I finally gave in to his disturbances, and that was how we began seeing each other. Our meetings became often, and we soon became a thing. I fell for Chris because he has a great personality, and I can't stress that enough. The more I knew Chris, the more stunned and honestly impressed I was. Chris is a dancer who managed TikTokers via the little media house that he set up. He had a group, and the guy whom he had rushed to the hospital was one of his crew members, who sustained an injury while they were rehearsing. They created content, and Chris would upload it to their official TikTok page, and their followership was quite impressive. I was from a comfortable or rich background and earned very well, but the demands of my profession would not let me live the kind of flashy life which most ladies did. That's not to say, however, that I did not look good. Chris, on the other hand, lived a very simple lifestyle. He had monetized his social media pages, and those who he managed and the amount that he made was far greater than what I earned, yet it did not reflect in his lifestyle. He didn't own a car, and his apartment, though spacious, only had the things which were necessary for a bachelor. He just did not live his life to please people or get their validation, and while most ladies might find his frugality appalling, I found it pretty appealing. Though I loved him, I kept our relationship a secret, as it's not gotten to the stage where I would take him to see my family. My sister soon announced her marriage, and I wanted to be supportive of my lover's means of livelihood, so I pleaded with Kathy to let me plan the event. The plan was to get Chris's crew to perform during the reception, and that was going to be a medium of creating further awareness and generating more income. I did not want to tell Kathy directly that I wanted Chris to perform at the event, as I knew she would raise an eyebrow, and that's why I went through the event planning route. Kathy was surprised at my request, as I was no event planner. She almost suspected that I was up to something, but I told her that I only wanted to use it as a medium to do something as my quote thank you for being there for me in the past. My sister bought my excuse and let me plan the wedding. The wedding turned out great, and those in attendance, including my family, were absolutely thrilled with the dance performance of Chris and his crew. Chris utilized the opportunity to connect with folks. A few days after the wedding, my sister informs me, and my dad, that she was coming with her husband to come and pick her things up. Kathy insisted that I was at home when she came, even though I felt it was not necessary. My sister arrived with her husband on that faithful day, and they brought Kelvin, her brother-in-law, along. A few minutes after they arrived, we were all seated at the parlor discussing. My sister thanked me for the way that I organized her wedding and made a statement about me doing the same for my own. I did not read any meanings into her statement, so I just laughed it off. She then introduced, or do I say reintroduced, Kelvin, because, well, I knew him, right from the during and wedding preparations. I soon got a hint of what my sister was trying to do when she noted that Kelvin was single and his wife was going to be a very lucky woman. Kelvin soon noted that he was about to take his leave and asked to be excused. I wondered what he was doing there in the first place, because I felt he was supposed to help my sister and her husband, just pick her up with the belongings. I minded my business, though, until my sister said I should show him the way out, like he was blind or something. Anyways, I did not want to seem rude, so I accompanied Kelvin outside, but I was certainly not going to act like the matchmaking scheme was working on me. Kelvin asked for my number, and I gave it to him. The greatest disturbances I've ever received in my life came within the next few days after I gave Kelvin my number, and I began doubting if he was the software engineer they said he was, because he seemed jobless to me. He could make, well, 1,000,000 calls to me and leave me several messages that nearly drove me insane. He tried starting up something between us, but I always declined it with the lie that I was busy. Well, it wasn't entirely a lie. I was busy. Too busy to have this time, and my older sister, on the other hand, would call me with the claim of checking up on me. But she would ask about Kelvin somewhere along the lines of our conversation. I felt irritated but held my peace. He showed up at my workplace one day with a bunch of flowers in his hand, and that's what I call the quote unexpected and unwanted move. I had to just save him further embarrassment by telling him nothing could work between us as I was not interested. Kelvin took my rejection in good faith, and he did not make a fuss about it. But someone else who was less involved in the matter decided to blow it out of proportion. Kathy drove down to the house that evening, and she was spitting fire. She asked what I have done to Kelvin, and though I knew where she was coming from, I said I feigned ignorance. My sister's voice was too loud that it attracted the attention of my father, who I did not want to learn about the matter. I told my father that it was nothing serious but a slight misunderstanding. But my sister, who was bent on creating a scene right then and there, told my dad that there was a problem. Well, my dad, he was worried, had this look on his face, and the moment she mentioned that there was a problem, my sister began saying I was trying to throw away an opportunity, which was given to me right here on a golden platter. I knew where she was headed, but I told my dad I had no idea. My sister went on to say that I had ruined the chance to get married to a very nice guy for reasons that she could not tell. I responded that I did not ask for any chance, and my father just looked confused at the both of us. I then told my dad that my sister was trying to force me into a relationship with her husband's brother, and the reason she was barking was simply because I had told him I was not interested in a relationship. My sister did not deny what I had said, and my father noted that it was wrong for her to enforce a relationship on me. I was loving my dad's response to the whole thing, but he turned the table around and put me in a hot spot. He wanted to know my reason for not wanting a relationship that could lead to marriage, as I was of marriageable age. I knew at that point that, well, could not use, quote, building my career as an excuse, as I was already a head nurse and a young age, so I had to tell my dad the truth. I told him I was already seeing someone. My dad asked why I had not brought that individual home, and I noted it was because I did not feel our relationship had gotten to that point. My sister, who was fuming at the mention of me being in a relationship with someone else, immediately remarked that I was foolish enough to throw away someone who wanted something serious with me over someone who was yet to discuss marriage. My sister had successfully embarrassed me, and I did not know what to do or say. Even my dad saw sense in what she said, and he advised me to not waste my time, as I was not growing any younger. He advised that I brought Chris to the house, as he would love to know the plans that he had for me. I was already feeling overwhelmed by everything, so I promised to do what my dad had said. I told Chris about the drama that happened, and he was willing to come see my father. He told me right to my face that he had been planning on proposing, but he had not done so as he did not want to feel rushed or pressured. Chris said the timing of everything was perfect, and if I was willing, then he won't just meet with my family, but would love to get married to me. What an unofficial way of proposing! I informed my father and sister that my man would be visiting them. Everyone was looking forward to it, and the visit was almost canceled a few days before, as Chris and I had a serious fight. I knew he needed to make a strong impression on my family. My sister would be looking out for every means to berate him, so I begged him, I pleaded with Chris, to dump the simple lifestyle for a few hours which he would be visiting. Well, I needed him to look like the rich guy that he was, as that would shut my sister's mouth. Chris did not see things the way I saw it, and he was disappointed that I had even made the suggestion of him changing himself. He said it was wrong asking him to change who he was, just to get validation from my family. My love and validation were all that mattered to him, and he just insisted that he was going to be himself and asked that I kept my family in the dark about his money. Chris is not the kind of guy you emotionally blackmail, so I just gave up the fight and decided to do things his way. He finally came to see my father and sister, and things went the way I had predicted. My father had taken time to ensure that some dignifying arrangements were made around the house, and this was because he felt my lover was going to be someone rich and extravagant. Chris showed up in a taxi, looking as simple as he always did. The moment that, he walked through the door, my dad and sister immediately recognized him to be the guy who had performed at my sister's wedding event. My dad could not help but exclaim, "Ah, the dancing boy." I began racing as fast as I have ever done before, and I felt it was a bad idea to bring Chris to come see my family like that. All the same, he was there and they had recognized him, so there's no going back now. I officially told my dad and sister that Chris was the man who had won my heart, and Kathy immediately burst out laughing while my father just looked on in surprise and disappointment. I cannot overemphasize how my sister's reaction to my statement hurt me. She was berating my man, and she did not mind doing it in front of him. My dad was still looking at me when Kathy immediately said my decision, and wanting to get married to someone like Chris proved I was insane, who did not know her left from her right. Chris remained quiet throughout the whole drama that was happening, but I was too pained to do the same. I told Kathy that her reaction proved that was pained, and I was not letting her run my life however she wanted. I further told her that I was with Chris out of love and not sentiment, and I asked Kathy to stay out of my business if she was not in support of it. Kathy found my statement to be disrespectful, and she wanted to be giving physical with me right in the presence of my dad and Chris, but my father's voice stopped her from assaulting me. My father asked Chris what his intentions were for me, and Chris replied he wanted to get married. Chris's reply prompted my dad to ask him if he had what it takes to take care of me, and though you might say it's a father looking out for his daughter, I still think the question was berating in a sense. Chris did not let his emotions show. He didn't start telling my dad he earned way more than the whole of the family combined. He simply said that he was willing to work hard to ensure that I did not starve or suffer from the lack of needs. Well, I was thinking my dad had been reasonable between him and my sister, but his next question, it proved me wrong. My father asked Chris if he planned on dancing his way to wealth, and both he and Kathy started another bout of laughter. Chris kept quiet while I looked on in disgust, and after my dad and Kathy had gotten their fill of laughter, he then turned to me and said, though he was disappointed at my choice of a partner, he was not going to stop me since I claimed it was what I wanted. My sister then commented on me having the strength to dance in the days when Chris would be too broke to provide. Chris was expectedly not impressed with my family, but he did not take it out on me by cutting off. The contraire. He still wanted to get married to me. We fixed a date for the wedding, and though I was offended at how my family had handled the visit with Chris, I did my best to simply overlook it. I met my father to tell him about the preparations going on. Knowing the kind of person my father was and the nature of the people he mingled with, I expected my wedding to be graced with, quote, the high and mighty of the society, and, I needed the exact amount so I could be better prepared for them. I had planned my sister's wedding, and I know the kind of guests that my father invites, so I was shocked when my father said that he was not expecting anybody to come. He said his mind was made up against inviting any of his friends, as it would be nothing more than an embarrassment for them to come out to his daughter's wedding and discover she's getting married to the dancing boy who had performed at his first daughter's wedding. So I just went ahead and asked my father what was wrong with me getting married to Chris, and he said Chris neither possessed the financial status nor the influence to mingle with us. Even though I knew my father was wrong, my eyes began swelling with tears, as Chris was right. My family would have received him better if they knew about his earnings, and that was wrong. People should be treated right regardless of how fat their pockets are. It should be how they act. My father said that although he is not going to stand in the way of my marriage to Chris, he would be embarrassed in the process. I would be going to see my sister in a few days to inform her about the wedding, and equally request the number of guests who would be in attendance, as my would-be husband would not want to waste resources throwing some elaborate wedding that would be attended by just a few individuals. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Oh man, today's story is a wild one. Can you believe the way the family's treating Chris? So what if he's not showing off his wealth? So what if he's poor or rich? Who cares? It should be about the way he treats OP. Alright, I do have multiple updates. If you guys are new to the channel, smash that subscribe button. Let's jump into update number 1. My family is pushing me to the point where I would cut off from them without ever looking back. I finally saw my sister, but she made me pass through a lot of stress before we could meet. I had called her several times to meet up at her place of her choosing of her time, but she always claimed to be busy with one thing or the other. I decided to take her by surprise on a weekend when I knew she was going to be at home. Kathy was surprised to see me, and she said I could have called before calling as she had other engagements. I knew she was trying to avoid me and evade my marriage discussion, which I suspected my dad would have told her. I refused to be dismissed easily, and I told her, hey, I just needed a few minutes of her time to discuss something really important. I asked for her husband, and Kathy noted. He was not around, so I proceeded to tell her my reason to come. I informed her that my marriage to Chris had been fixed, and one of the reasons I was there was to inform her and her husband about it. Kathy hissed and said I had decided to get married to Chris despite her opinions. I knew if I replied to that statement the way I felt like, we would have gotten into a serious argument, so I just kept quiet. What she had given to me was not just an opinion or a suggestion. She was trying to impose Kelvin on me, and if it were an opinion, she would have respected my decision. I mean, right? Kathy went on to say it was best that her husband was not around, as he would not come for the wedding. I asked how could she tell he was not going to come for the wedding when he was not even aware that a wedding was being planned, and just as I suspected, my father had informed Kathy about it. Kathy said her husband felt disrespected, that I had turned down any form of relationship with his brother, and I was getting married to someone else. What a bunch of entitled people. My sister was entitled, and, well, her husband was exactly the same. They were indeed a perfect match. I did not act like I was angry. I just asked my sister to prepare the list of those who she would like to invite so I could make provisions for them. And to my shock, she said, "Oh, that's not going to be necessary," as she would not be attending my wedding. I said or did nothing besides staring at her in disbelief. She said it was nothing personal, but it was a needed decision since her husband was not going to be present. She claimed that coming to my wedding without her husband was a threat to her marriage, as her husband could see her as not being a respectful and supportive wife, and it could lead to issues in her household. In a nutshell, my sister was saying that she had to show support and respect for her husband, who would not be attending the wedding by equally staying away from it. I left my sister's house that day with a mixture of sadness and resentment. My sister had told me to my face that she would not be present in what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, because of her husband, and, well, that was a lie. She had chosen to keep away from my wedding because she did not support my choice of husband. My wedding is in a few days, and I'm determined to not let anything weigh me down. Update number 2. Hey guys, I'm sorry. I know, it's been like 6 months. Hear me out. I am a newly wedded bride and would have been so eager to make an update. Before I move on, I just want to let you know that I'm currently pregnant. My wedding day was great, but I will not lie. I felt somewhat lonely. The only family member I had present was my dad, and he was there out of reluctance. My older sister, Kathy, was absent, but that was expected. What I found shocking was the fact that my extended family members whom I had invited were absent, even though they promised that they would be there. I knew it was either the handiwork of my sister or my father, or heck, both of them. My husband Chris gave me permission and the resources to revamp our house however I saw fit. I made sure it was top-notch. He equally gifted me a very expensive car, and though I'm appreciative of the vehicle, I still feel like I've been betrayed and my family's cut me off. I soon got word that one of my cousins was having her engagement party and the whole extended family, including my father and sister, would be there. I initially did not want to attend, as they had all turned their back on me, but then I changed my mind. I decided I'll go straight to the event, as it would be a nice opportunity to show my family that I was doing great without them. I showed up at the party in my vehicle and everybody was stunned. They never expected that I would own a vehicle whose value dwarfed theirs. I began going around greeting everyone, and including my father and sister. One of my cousins then said my husband was treating me right, as I could afford a vehicle like that. And that was contrary to what my sister and father had told them, that I was getting married to someone who could barely feed himself. My sister immediately jumped into the mix and claimed what she and my dad had said about Chris was true. She went ahead to say that I'd probably gotten the vehicle with the whole of my savings, and I'd likely sell it after my child's birth, as there would be a need for money. Most of my extended family members were gathered together at this point. They started chuckling at the degrading statement that my sister made. I smiled and said that they got it all wrong. I then asked one of my cousins to search for a name on TikTok, and they were surprised when a video of Chris popped up. His following left their jaws dropping to the floor, and I began explaining to them that my husband owned a media house, where he managed a bunch of TikTokers, besides the dancing which he did. I let them know that the dancing was something he had loved doing all his life, so he just decided to make money while doing it. My entire family marveled at my explanation, and besides being marveled, my older sister and father were both embarrassed, and they looked so stupid for mocking someone who earned way beyond them put together. I had a good time at the party and capped it off with a dance while everyone else watched. After all, I'm married to the dancing boy. It's been 3 days since the drama at the party, and I'm yet to tell my husband what happened. I don't think I would, as I know he won't be happy I had finally left the cat out of the bag by revealing his TikTok and the income to my family. Update number 3. My front door has been so busy opening up to family members these past few days. I was with Chris this past weekend when my older sister and some of my female cousins who were at the party showed up at our home. It was the first time that they bothered to visit ever since I got married, and Chris and I were surprised at their visit. We weren't the only ones surprised. My siblings were equally, awed to see how much our family wanted to be there and how crazy our home was. We received them without any display of bad blood, even though I knew something was fishy. My sister then spoke up for the group and said they wanted to host a baby shower party for me. I looked suspiciously at them because these were those who had refused to come to my wedding. After all, they felt I was getting married, right, to a poor person. They were enjoying the wrong notion that Kathy was about spreading at the party that I was broke and would need to sell my car until I proved her wrong. I thanked them for their offer, but before declining it, I told them that they did not need to go through the trouble of throwing me a party as I was too busy for such. After my siblings left my house that day, Chris asked what must have brought about the sudden change in their character. I knew it was obvious because I had revealed to them the level of income he made, and being a person who loved associating with the influential, they were now trying to draw close to him. But I didn't tell my husband this. I feigned ignorance. I had to come clean someday, later, when it was my father who showed up at the house, and you would not believe what his reason for coming was. Listen to this, guys. I was away from my home, and I was shocked when Chris told me of his visit. I could picture myself in the scene of events from the way Chris recounted the experience. He said my dad treated him with so much regard and respect that he wondered what had changed my dad's perception of him. Chris said my dad had told him about an event he wanted to put up to celebrate his retirement, which would be coming up soon. He wanted Chris to organize the event and cover the financial cost, and he wanted Chris to perform with his crew there too. Chris had promised my father that he would do it without consulting me. I immediately told him that my father and family planned on using both of us. Him more specifically. He asked what I meant, and I told him about how I had to reveal his true financial status at my cousin's engagement party, and cited it as the reason why my family had been swarming around us these past few days. Chris was not happy I divulged the information to them, but he understood I was trying to defend him. He immediately decided he would proceed no further in helping to set up my father's retirement party. He's yet to inform my father, though. Update number 4, final update. My husband sent my father a text that he was not going to sponsor or perform or even be at my dad's party. He did not give my father his reasoning for backing out, and it was intentional. My father replied, but no via text. He bombarded Chris with a series of phone calls until Chris had no option but to answer. He accused Chris of being stingy and felt he could take away his daughter, aka me, for free. He said the money which was involved was nothing to him, but he just wanted to give Chris the privilege of doing something for his father-in-law. He threatened to deal with Chris. Chris did not apologize for disappointing my father. It was the point of everything, to make him mad. We had thought my father could do nothing, but we never knew we were underestimating his ability to be a pain in our butts. Chris woke me up from my sleep the next day and he was running mad. My father had succeeded in pushing us to a panic. My father had made a video where he accused Chris of hiding his true wealth when he came to marry me, only to reveal it after he, being my father, had used his own money to sponsor our wedding. My father posted the video as a link in their TikTok comment section, and Chris's followers reviewing it. We tried reaching out to my father, but he purposely made himself inaccessible. I reached out to my sister and told her what happened, and I asked her to help talk to my father to put out a new video, where he asked fans to disregard the terrible things that he said about my husband. Kathy was willing to do so, but she had no condition attached. There was a cloth line that she and my cousins wanted to launch, and they wanted my husband, Chris, to create awareness on the page to his followers for their new clothing brand. This, in a nutshell, is asking my husband to be their brand ambassador for free, and that was why they had wanted to throw me a baby shower party. Well, the funny part is that they had come up with the idea after learning of my husband's influence. Those opportunists. I got more information about the product, and Chris and I decided to take another route in salvaging and, well, his tarnished image while making my family pay. We were not going to sue my father, who was soon going to be retired senior lawyer. We dealt with the issue our way. Chris and I both created a video where I talked about how partial my family was to people they perceived to be the lower class. I debunked all my father had said and provided images of my scantily attended wedding, which was because my father and sister had talked out my extended family from going, which they thought it's because I was marrying a broke guy. As regards the product awareness thing, Chris told his followers of my sister's condition to sell her and my cousin's product to them before she could talk to my father into debunking his claims. Guys, our plan worked out well, as Chris's followers are calling for my family's head online, and you can be certain that that product would not make sales anytime soon. My entire family has started brewing up series of threats, but I know they're just reacting to the wound which we inflicted on them. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think OP and her husband went way too far at the end of the story when they used his influence to basically make fun of OP's family, go ahead and shut down their new clothing store, all the above? Let me know your thoughts about it downstairs in our comment section. Today's story was wild. A family drama for sure, but I can't help but wonder why they were giving OP's husband such a hard time. I mean, is it that serious if he makes a lot of money or not when they loved each other? Let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop it downstairs. If you guys are new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day. If you want to be a part of these stories, stop by tomorrow, see what we're up to. I'll catch you then, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!